Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Amplify with Adam. Today we have Joe here from DELO Design. Joe, man, really excited to have you on. Thanks for joining.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. So Joe, give our audience a little bit of an introduction into yourself and kind of tell us a little bit about how you got into
Sure.
manufacturing and just your background a little bit.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I own a company called DELO Design, and I became a qualified manufacturing partner with Zometry over this past summer. Started out in high school wanting to become a machinist, but later decided to become a mechanical engineer. It was a great career. During my career, one of my favorite things to do was to spend time with tool makers and machinists, figuring out, how to set something up and doing design for manufacturing. So never really lost the passion for it. What I found is being a Zometry partner, really gives me the opportunity to apply these skills and my knowledge, and also challenge my knowledge because of the diverse mix of work that's available. So I feel this is a win-win for both.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So how long were you a mechie before you got in to start kind of making stuff?
I spent 28 years in the industry, so a long time.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So when did you get your first machine?
Well, I mean, my first real machine, what I consider a real machine, was about a year ago.
Okay.
Um, and before that, I was learning about all kinds of machinery and building my own. So,
Yeah. So you're kind of fresh into the space a little bit from a real machine perspective. What was the first one you got?
so it's a three-axis CNC machine. It's a track industries, and yeah, it's a good machine. Uh, I can tell you, it's a huge step up from the hobby world. It's night and day. So.
Yeah. So what are some things that you've learned as you've kind of made that step?
So what I've learned is, the principles of machining. Um, One of the good things about using a less capable machine is it forces you to become a better setup person and really learning, these speeds and feeds. So you can get away with a lot more with a bigger machine, but what happens is you wind up paying for it in the end because your inefficient process is going to cost you money and ultimately quality. So that's been something I've learned.
Yeah, no, that I think that's so true is that focus on the process. While it might take a little bit more extra time, right? It'll save you on the back end
Yeah.
on mistakes there. So now, are you getting most of your work? You said you joined Zometry last summer. Welcome aboard. At this point, are you getting some local customers to mix in with Zometry, or is kind of the Zometry flow a lot of your customer base?
So I have steady work from my design and prototyping business,
Hmm.
and then I also have some local customers who do small onesie twosie stuff. Mainly Zometry, I find is a what I love about it is the wide mix of work and the wide all kinds of things thrown at you, including some of the generative design. You can tell some of these things are coming out now, and it's like, wow, those are very futuristic looking, and how do you make it? So once again, it goes back to challenging, yourself.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, as you got started a year ago, what was some like strategy you took to actually like acquiring some of that customer base you just touched on? I see you've got a website. It's well designed, and is it a lot of web based stuff, or is it a lot of relationships that you've built up over your experience in the industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. So 28 years in the industry, I've met a lot of people, and I was specifically in the medical device industry. So I have a lot of connections as a result, and I was able to obtain 26 patents over my career. So I was able to build quite a reputation for myself. And
Yeah.
so most of the work I get is through people I know. The website is there for presence only, and it honestly, I need to improve it. Um, yeah, so that's how my work comes in. Usually, it's through connections.
Yeah. So, do you find yourself still focused on the medical kind of field, or have you been able to diversify at all?
I do have uh, medical field work, but I've
Mhm.
been trying to diversify because what it does is it forces you to get out of the status quo and forces you to think differently. A lot of the medical device things are challenging. Don't get me wrong, but they're usually not too large. They're usually, made out of stainless steel or titanium. And so working with other materials and other shapes and sizes of things, and also additive processes that are not common in medical devices. You have to account for those things in your manufacturing. If you're going to have something nickel plated, you've got to make sure you're not going to screw up your tolerance after it gets plated. Um, so I always find it helpful to try new things because
Yeah.
it's a springboard for learning, and then also you can apply it and become better at what your core competency is, and at the same time trying to develop a new one. So
I feel like that's a kind of a trend with you, is challenging yourself, learning new things. That feels like a kind of a core tenet for you.
well, if anyone's ever watched the video, that was produced by Apple, Apple's founder. He said, "Stay foolish." Right.
Mhm.
So there you go.
I love that, man. I
Yeah.
love that. So along that vein, what does kind of the near future look like for you? Like, what are some ways that you want to challenge yourself or learn some things moving forward?
So I really have some high hopes of getting 5-axis machine,
Hmm.
because I really think it's going to become the new 3-axis machine. 4-axis was nice for certain things, and it is I need to acquire that as well. But the 5-axis is really the future of material removal technology. I would like to also, get into some of these more hands-on processes, like rapid molding of silicones and
Hmm.
uh, urethane type materials, because I find a lot of that is in my field as well. And
Yeah.
there isn't really ever a good way to do it, because there isn't a machine that can necessarily duplicate everything you can do with a 3D printed mold, and then you could learn about your process too. But 3D printing is huge. I don't foresee myself expanding the capability of my 3D printing beyond what I have, because, for example, Zometry has the best machines that I could never justify getting machines like the DMLS machines that you guys have
Mhm.
and things like that. So once again, it's just I always believe in trying to find the best person for the job rather than trying to do everything yourself. So that's my philosophy.
Yeah, no, it does feel like that, 5-axis is the way of the future, right? Because not only is it more efficient for you guys, but it's also, engineers are designing parts more complex, right?
Yeah.
So once the new technology hits, you're never going backwards, right? So
Oh yeah.
the whole
Absolutely.
industry is moving that way.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's
Now, it feels like kind of constant education is something that's really important to you. What are some areas that, like, when you're talking about, kind of expanding some capabilities, what are some areas that you go for good information to learn? Is it really hands-on learning, or do you have some good areas for acquiring some of that information?
Well, I do a lot of hands-on learning, certainly, but equally as much, if not more, I rely on good buddies that are in the field that have been doing prototyping and machining and tool making longer than I've been alive, and also which I'm pretty old, so and then also the community, Zometry community is great. I've trolled the board. I haven't actively participated to a high degree yet, but I plan to. Um,
Hmm.
and it's a great resource to have. I also belong to some online forums like Practical Machinist and CNC Zone, and I find those helpful as well.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It does feel like the manufacturing community just at large, right, is so passionate about helping and passing on knowledge that if you have a question, right, you can post it to some of those online forums, or access folks that in the industry that personally, and folks are always willing to lend a helping hand, which
Yeah.
you often don't find in other industries. So it's really cool to see how powerful it is in the manufacturing space.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
So So one thing that I always ask is, if you're talking to someone that's kind of interested in getting into the manufacturing space, right? Like machining and anything, additive or material removal. What are some pieces of advice that you would pass along for, like, if someone's looking to start their own small shop? what are some things that you've learned that you would say, hey, focus on these. These are a couple nuggets. I love your kind of like constant learning and stay foolish, but what's something else that you would pass along?
Well, I would say that, you do, oftentimes I've met people that are jack of all trades, and, you can't be, a mile wide and an inch deep. You have to commit to something.
Yeah.
And you have to become good at something, because your brand is what you're good at. So you can't just be, some people, that's more of a hobby, right? If you're going to become a master of something, then you need to really apply yourself and dedicate yourself to something, whether, being machining or 3D printing or molding or anything like that. So my advice would be to, find something that you really, want to be good at, and focus on that. That's not to say you shouldn't spend time on other things, because everything's interrelated somewhat, but you really need to apply yourself and commit to one thing.
Yeah, I think that's powerful advice, and especially if you pair that with kind of your stay foolish motto, you dive deep into one thing, but you can constantly be adding to that by learning things slightly outside of that, right? And you start to expand your knowledge and your capabilities in a really kind of efficient way, right? So you stay a master here, but start to build onto that over here. So I think that's really great advice, man.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Joe, man, I so appreciated this conversation and loved you coming on. It sounds like DELO's got a really awesome future ahead. So potentially we'd love to talk to you again in the future as we start to add more capabilities and just kind of see that growth. Because I really enjoyed having you on the show, man.
Thank you. Same here. It's been great, and I hope to talk to you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining another episode of Amplify with Adam. Tune in next week for another one. Thanks, Joe.
Take care.